Brilliance Audio presents The Keeper of Happy Endings by Barbara Davis, performed by Hope Newhouse and Robin Siegerman. It couldn't be Sunday. Not already. Rory smacked the snooze button and fell back onto her pillow, wishing the day away. But 5 minutes later, the alarm shrilled again, which could mean only one thing. Somehow, another week had been swallowed whole, gone in a blur of takeout and old movies, interminable nights immersed in other people's happy endings. A pulpy paperback thumped to the floor as she threw back the covers and put her feet on the floor. Kathleen Woodywis's A Rose in Winter finished last night around 4 a.m. She stared at it, splayed open at her feet like a felled bird. She'd never been a fan of romance novels. Now, she couldn't devour them fast enough, a guilty pleasure that made her vaguely ashamed, like gambling or a porn addiction. She scooped up the novel and tossed it into a wicker basket filled with a dozen more just like it, waiting to be taken to Goodwill. There was another box by the front door and a third in her trunk. Junk food for the brain, her mother called them, but her eyes were already sliding to the stack of new titles on the nightstand. Tonight, Johanna Lindsay's latest awaited. She poked through the jumble of unopened mail beside the bed, including the master's program course catalog she'd been doing her best to avoid, finally locating the steel and gold Rolex her mother had given her when she finished undergrad. As expected, it had stopped running, the date in the little magnifying bubble off by 3 days. She reset the time and slid it onto her wrist, then set her sights on a mug of strong coffee. No way was she facing today without caffeine. In the kitchen, she eyed her surroundings with a creeping sense of overwhelm. The sink full of dishes, the brimming trash can, the remnants of last night's takeout from Eastern Paradise still sitting on the counter. She'd meant to tidy up after dinner, but then Random Harvest came on and she hadn't been able to tear herself away until Greer Garson and Ronald Coleman were finally reunited. By the time she stopped blubbering, she'd forgotten about the kitchen. And now there wasn't time if she was going to make it across town by 11. She toyed with calling to cancel as she splashed half and half into her mug. A sore throat, or a migraine, a messy case of food poisoning. But she'd already bailed twice this month, which meant she had to do this. In the shower, she rehearsed for the grilling she knew was coming. Questions about her studies, her hobbies, her plans for the future. The questions never changed, and it was getting harder and harder to pretend she cared about any of it. The truth was, she had no hobbies to speak of, dreaded the idea of returning to school, and her plans for the future were in serious doubt. But she would put on a brave face and say the right things because that's what was expected of her, and because the alternative, a deep dive into the black hole that had become her life, was simply too exhausting to contemplate. She padded to the bedroom, toweling her hair as she went, doing her best to resist the familiar pull from her nightstand. It was a ritual she'd begun of late, starting each day with 1 or 2 of Hux's letters, but there wasn't time this morning. And yet she found herself opening the bottom drawer, lifting out the box she kept there. 43 envelopes, addressed in his thin, sprawling script, a lifeline tethering her to him, keeping her from hitting bottom. The first had arrived in her mailbox just 5 hours after his flight left Logan. He'd sent it overnight delivery to make sure it arrived on the right day. He'd written another while sitting at the gate and one more while on the plane. They'd come nearly every day at first, before leveling off to 1 or 2 a week. And then they'd simply stopped